The reading of the will echoed in the hushed courtroom. Whispers rippled through the family members assembled. Some were whispers of anticipation, others of thinly veiled greed.
Young Daniel, however, felt a cold hand grip his heart. His grandfather, his mentor, his confidant, was gone. The whispers meant nothing to him. The lawyer, a stern man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, cleared his throat. The whispers ceased. Daniel's inheritance was a dilapidated old house on the edge of town, a property everyone considered more of a burden than a boon. A collective gasp filled the room. Aunts and uncles, their faces a mixture of shock and barely concealed glee, turned to stare at Daniel. Daniel, lost in his grief, barely registered their reactions. The old house held a special place in his heart. It was filled with memories of his grandfather, memories more valuable than any fortune. I stood up, my gaze fixed on the portrait of my grandfather hanging above the fireplace, a small, knowing smile playing on the old man's lips. I knew with unshakable certainty that my inheritance was far more valuable than anyone could imagine.
Daniel had always been different from his siblings. While they pursued careers and chased material wealth, he chose to spend his time with their grandfather, a retired history professor with a twinkle in his eye and a story for every occasion.
Daniel's siblings scoffed at his choice, calling him naive and foolish. They couldn't understand the bond he shared with their grandfather, a bond forged in shared laughter, whispered secrets, and a love for adventure that transcended generations.
Daniel's grandfather had instilled in him a deep appreciation for history, for the stories etched in the walls of ancient buildings and buried beneath layers of time.
Daniel's favorite story was about their ancestor, a daring sea captain who had supposedly hidden his treasure somewhere on their family's land. The story was a family legend passed down through generations, but no one had ever taken it seriously, except Daniel's grandfather.
News of Daniel's inheritance spread through the family like wildfire. His siblings, who had barely acknowledged him before, suddenly became overly interested in his well-being.
Their phone calls, once infrequent and filled with thinly veiled disdain, became more frequent, their voices dripping with false concern and veiled suggestions.
They suggested selling the house, dividing the profits, and finally getting a real start in life.
They saw only the dilapidated house and the perceived lack of value. Daniel saw through their charade. He would honor his grandfather's memory and uncover the secrets the old house held, even if it meant facing his family's wrath. The house stood at the end of a gravel path, shrouded by overgrown trees and cloaked in an eerie silence. The paint peeled from its walls like shedding skin, revealing the weathered wood beneath. The windows, most of them boarded up, stared out blindly, like the eyes of an old man who had seen too much of the world.
Daniel stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced through cracks in the boarded-up windows. The air was thick with the smell of decay, of time slowly claiming its due. Cobwebs draped the furniture like ghostly shrouds, and the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot. He wandered through the rooms, each one a faded snapshot of a life lived.
As he explored, a sense of sadness washed over him. But beneath the sadness, Daniel felt a flicker of excitement, sensing his grandfather's presence in every creak of the floorboards. Days turned into weeks as Arthur meticulously searched the old house.
I examined every nook and cranny, every loose floorboard, every dusty corner.
He pored over his grandfather's journals, deciphering cryptic notes and sketches.
I followed every lead, every whisper of a clue, determined to unravel the mystery my grandfather had dedicated his life to solving.
One evening, while studying an old nautical map he found tucked away in the attic, Arthur noticed a peculiar marking.
It was a small, almost imperceptible symbol, etched into the corner of the map. I recognized it from my grandfather's journals.
It was the same symbol his grandfather believed was the key to finding the hidden treasure.
My heart pounding with anticipation, I traced the symbol with my fingers, my mind racing.
His pulse quickening, Arthur dropped to his knees and examined the floorboard.
It looked like any other, worn and discolored with time.
But as he ran his fingers over its surface, he felt it.
A slight irregularity, a subtle difference in texture, as if the wood had been tampered with.
With trembling hands, he grabbed a chisel and a hammer from his grandfather's old toolbox.
I took a deep breath, the air heavy with dust and anticipation.
Then, with a swift, decisive blow, he drove the chisel into the floorboard.
The sound echoed through the silent house, a sharp crack that shattered the stillness.
The floorboard splintered, revealing a small hidden compartment beneath.
My heart leaped into my throat. I dropped the chisel and hammer, my fingers trembling with excitement as I reached into the compartment.
His fingers brushed against something cold and hard.
I pulled it out, my breath catching in my throat as I saw what it was.
It was a small, ornate key crafted from tarnished silver. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and adrenaline, Arthur spent the next few hours frantically searching the house.
I tried the key on every door, every drawer, every chest I could find, but to no avail.
The lock it belonged to seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the house itself.
Just when my frustration reached its peak, I remembered something my grandfather used to say. Sometimes, the most obvious hiding place is the one we overlook.
His gaze swept across the room, taking in every detail, every shadow, every piece of furniture.
And that's when I saw it.
The old grandfather clock, its pendulum frozen in time, stood sentinel in the corner of the room.
It was a magnificent piece of furniture, crafted from dark, polished wood, its face adorned with intricate carvings.
Arthur had always admired the clock, but he had never considered it as a potential hiding place.
It was too obvious, too cliché.
He approached the clock cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest.
As I reached for the keyhole, hidden beneath the clock's face, a strange sense of calm washed over me.
It was as if his grandfather's spirit was guiding him, whispering words of encouragement.
I inserted the key into the lock and turned it.
The sight of such wealth was overwhelming. Daniel stood there for a long moment, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing.
It was the scent of forgotten dreams, of ambitions long extinguished, of a time when pirates roamed the seas and treasures were buried and lost.
He stepped into the chamber, his hand trembling as he picked up a gold coin.
He turned it over in his hands, examining the intricate details of its design.
As he held the coin, a strange feeling washed over him. It wasn't the euphoria he had expected, the rush of excitement that comes with finding a hidden treasure.
He realized that this treasure, this symbol of wealth and prosperity, was also a symbol of greed, of the insatiable human desire for more. He thought of his siblings, of their relentless pursuit of wealth and status.
Daniel spent the next few days carefully cataloging the treasure. He contacted a reputable appraiser, who confirmed its authenticity and estimated its value to be in the tens of millions.
He was now incredibly wealthy, able to afford anything he ever desired. But as he stared at the piles of gold and precious stones, he felt a growing sense of emptiness.
He realized that true happiness didn't lie in material possessions, but in something far more profound.
He knew what he had to do. He wouldn't let the treasure consume him, wouldn't let it turn him into something he wasn't.
He contacted a lawyer, a kind woman with a warm smile and a gentle demeanor.
He would donate the majority of the treasure to various charities, organizations that aligned with his grandfather's values. He would establish a scholarship fund in his grandfather's name, giving underprivileged students the opportunity to pursue their dreams.
The news of Daniel's decision sent shockwaves through the community. Newspapers ran headlines praising his generosity, his selflessness.
He received letters from all over the country, from people whose lives had been touched by his generosity.
His siblings, however, were not pleased. They accused him of being foolish, of throwing away their inheritance.
He watched as the charities he had chosen thrived, as the scholarship fund bearing his grandfather's name gave deserving students a chance at a brighter future.
And in those moments, he felt a sense of fulfillment, of purpose, that no amount of wealth could ever buy. He had honored his grandfather's memory in the best way possible, not by hoarding the treasure, but by using it to make the world a better place. Years later, long after the initial shock and awe had faded, Daniel stood before the newly renovated community center, a testament to his grandfather's legacy.
The building, once dilapidated and forgotten, now stood as a beacon of light, a symbol of the transformative power of generosity.
He had found something far more valuable than the hidden treasure, something far more enduring than wealth or possessions.
It wasn't the gold or the gems, but the legacy of love, kindness, and integrity that his grandfather had passed down to him.
They had learned the hard way that true happiness couldn't be bought or inherited. It had to be cultivated, nurtured, and shared. As he looked around at the smiling faces, at the tangible evidence of the good he had done, Daniel realized that his grandfather had left him the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that true wealth lies not in what we possess, but in what we give away.
And in that realization, he found a peace, a sense of fulfillment that no amount of treasure could ever buy.
The true inheritance was the legacy of generosity and love, a treasure beyond measure.